Hi there guys, and welcome back. I hope you are having a good day. Today is of course the Beltane, May Day, May the 1st, a very, very important day. You may have noticed some intro music playing there. Well, that was composed by a wonderful friend of mine called Anders. Anders, thank you very much for your awesome work. I really, really like it, and I hope you guys like it too. Now, today's story is written by another good friend of mine called James Stone, and it's quite appropriate for today, and I'm sure you'll realise why by the end of the story. So, this is a bit of a longer one. I hope you enjoy it. Make sure you're buckled in. So here we go. This is called Roots by James Stone. Finn Joseph Allen sat in the back seat of his mum's car on the way home from school. He had risen entirely from his seat and crashed back down as the car drove too fast over a speed bump. "Mum!" Finn said gruffly. "Sorry, Finn, you okay?" He mumbled a response and picked at a loose piece of thread from his school jumper. "Finn!" His mum met his gaze in the rearview mirror. "Are you okay?" He nodded unconvincingly, trying his best to fight back the tears that stung his eyes. His mum squinted, clearly not buying Finn's pathetic attempt to seem okay. "What's wrong?" she pushed, and Finn felt his cheeks rise in temperature. "It's nothing, I don't want to talk about it." Now his mum really looked concerned, but she dropped the subject, or so he thought. "How was school?" "Fine." Finn was using his sulky teenager voice despite only being 10 years old. "What's for dinner?" Mum let out a small burst of laughter. "You and your stomach, Finn, seriously?" "Well, what are we having?" Finn was a surprisingly skinny young boy, with long arms and legs, and easily the tallest in his class. It was his height and stature, Finn was sure, that had contributed to the decision that had been made at school today. The one that had made him so angry and upset. "How about lasagna?" Finn's mum looked at him in the mirror with a beaming smile, revealing her slightly crooked, coffee-stained teeth. Lasagna was Finn's favourite, but he was not in the mood to show any excitement. "Sure, Kay," Finn grumbled back. As soon as the car stopped on the drive in front of their home, Finn jumped out, grabbed his school bag and hastily made his way inside. He kicked his scuffed school shoes onto the floor at the bottom of the stairs and ran up them as fast as he could. "Finn, where are you going?" his mum yelled up at him, having tried to catch him in his haste to get indoors. "My room." Before she could respond, Finn's bedroom door had slammed shut. He threw himself head first onto his bed and buried his face in the freshly laundered Minecraft pillow and began to cry. He rolled onto his back and wiped a long streak of snot across the sleeve of his ill-fitting school jumper. There was a knock at the bedroom door and he sat bolt upright, trying to wipe his eyes, which just made them even more red. "Come on, Finn, what's wrong?" His mum's voice came through the door. "Go away, please," he sobbed. His mum, in typical parent style, ignored him and let herself in. She perched on the edge of the bed and wrapped her arms around him. "What's happened? Is there a problem at school?" He nodded, slowly wiping more snot onto his sleeve. "Come on, Finn, tell me what's wrong." Her fingers stroked through his thick, messy hair. He sniffed twice before speaking again, trying to calm himself down. "They gave out the roles for the school play today." "Okay, and that's bad because?" Mum said. "Well, I wanted to be the donkey or the rabbit or the motorbike." Sounds like an interesting play." His mum pulled her sarcastic face and then smiled kindly at him. "So what are you going to be?" "A tree," he groaned, unimpressed. He stared down at the threadbare navy blue carpet. Tears welled in his eyes and then began to roll down his cheeks. "Why is that bad then?" Now he pulled away from his mum and looked shocked, his eyes wide and a little wild. "Of course it's bad, I just stand still. I don't speak, I don't move, I don't do anything." His mum was silent for a moment. She chewed the inside of her cheek the way she did when she was deep in thought. She knew being a tree was no good, and obviously she agreed with Finn. "Look, Finn, if you are going to be a tree, then do you know what you should do?" she asked him. "No, what?" Finn replied. "You should be the best tree that anyone has ever seen. Be the best little tree that you can." Finn thought for a moment. Then, for the first time since he'd been given this awful role, he smiled. "That's better," Mum said, smiling gently. "Look, come on, let's get started on dinner. You can help. You'll feel better after dinner." Finn ate a huge plate of lasagna. In fact, he ate 2 huge plates of lasagna. After all, it was his favourite. After dinner, there was a little time for playing, before a bath, and then finally he climbed into bed. His mum tucked him in and planted a kiss on his forehead, which he wiped off instantly. She flicked his bedside lamp on and stood watching him from the doorway. "Good night, my little tree." "Good night, Mum," Finn replied with a smile. His mum pulled the door until Finn could only see a thin sliver of light shining through the gap. He rolled onto his side and stared through a gap in his curtains. To his amazement, he saw a shooting star. He excitedly remembered something his dad always told him, so Finn made a wish and then drifted off to sleep. Finn was dreaming that he was walking through the woods and talking to the trees and the flowers and the plants, when suddenly he awoke with a start. His mouth was incredibly dry and he desperately needed a drink. He looked at the clock sitting beside his bedside lamp. It was nearly midnight. He swung his legs out from under the duvet and padded across his bedroom floor, down the creaking stairs, into the kitchen, where he poured himself a nice cold glass of water. He heard the familiar sound of claws skittering along the kitchen floor. He turned to see his little dog, Dennis, running excitedly towards him. He stroked Dennis's head. Suddenly the dog did something that shocked him. He peed. His dog cocked his leg and peed all over his foot. "Oh, that's gross, Dennis!" The kitchen light flicked on and Finn blinked until his eyes adjusted to the light. "What are you doing, Finn?" His mum stood in her dressing gown staring at Finn and Dennis. Her hair looked like a tangled bird's nest sitting on her head. "The dog peed on me!" Dennis had never done anything quite so disgusting. His mum frowned and squinted, then her jaw dropped open and her hands drew up, covering her mouth. "Oh, Finn, what have you done to yourself?" "Nothing, it wasn't me, it was the dog." "No, I don't mean that, I mean your hands, your feet, your head." Finn lifted his hands and stared at them in disbelief. Growing from underneath his fingernails were what looked like long blades of grass. Then he stared down at his feet and saw a twisted mess of roots growing from his toenails. Finally, he lifted his grassy hands to his head, where he could feel 3 small horn-like bumps on the top of his skull. His mum chuckled. "Look, I know you need your costume by Monday, but we have the whole weekend to work on it. Come on, Finn, back up to your room, get all that off and back into bed." But Finn hadn't done this to himself, although he had a good idea of how it happened. He clomped back off upstairs and climbed back into bed. He was smiling from ear to ear. He couldn't believe that his wish to become the best tree that he could was clearly starting to come true. Early the next morning, Finn woke to the sound of Dennis barking downstairs. He sat up, twisted his body out of bed and set his feet on the floor with a thud. He looked down. The roots that had been growing out from the ends of his toes were now much bigger and were wrapping around his feet and ankles. The skin on his arms and hands had become tough and cracked like real tree bark, and the blades of grass that had grown beneath his fingertips had sprouted into long, thin branches and were covered in small, beautiful green leaves. He moved slowly, with the weight of his new legs dragging behind him, and trudged downstairs and found his mum and Dennis in the kitchen. "Oh my word!" his mum gasped. "Have you been up all night working on your costume?" "I'm sorry, Mum. What do you think of it?" She gave him a stern look by raising her eyebrows, but then her face softened. "Well, I'm not overly happy that you stayed up all night. That being said, I am rather impressed with the costume." "I'm going to keep my costume on till Monday. I need to get into character. Is that okay, Mum?" His mum laughed and agreed with him. "Fair enough. Well, you really will be the best tree ever." Finn spent the rest of the weekend growing, sprouting and knotting in places. All of his skin was now dark and cracked like true tree bark. His blue eyes peered out from under a low-hanging branch that had grown out of his forehead and was covered with beautiful blossoms. As Finn excitedly went to sleep on Sunday night, his roots and branches were spilling all over the bed and creeping across his bedroom floor. He really couldn't wait to go into school and show everyone his costume. Finn woke super early on Monday morning and got out of bed and made his way downstairs. His mum was preparing breakfast in the kitchen. "Mum," Finn asked, now standing 2 feet taller than her, "can we walk to school today, please?" She craned her neck to look up at Finn's face and smiled. "Wow, that really is some costume. And it's a lovely day, so I don't see why not." They walked, slowly of course, to school. On the journey, 2 birds landed in Finn's tangled branches and made themselves rather comfortable. They arrived at the school gates to astonished looks and impressed gasps. All of the other children told Finn his costume looked awesome. He felt so proud. He swayed from left to right as he moved through the playground. He hunched through the corridors and made his way straight to the drama hall. "Wow, that is a costume and a half," praised Mr. Martins, the drama teacher. "I think you might just be stealing this show." And that was exactly what Finn did. The parents, teachers and pupils that were there to see the play whooped and cheered, and a few of Finn's close friends even climbed onto his branches and swung from his arms. "Next year I want to be a tree," yelled one boy. "And me," agreed another. "Me too," yelled a third. Eventually, every boy and girl wanted to be a tree, just like Finn. Finn and his mum made their way slowly home again, all the way talking to one another about how good the play was and how Finn's costume was, without a doubt, the best there. By the time they had got home, it had started to get dark, and a few stars were shining brightly in the sky. They stood together in the garden looking up. "They're unusually bright tonight, don't you think, Finn?" His mum turned to look up at Finn and smiled a warm smile. "I'm proud of you, Finn," she said. "You really were the best tree you could have been. Well done." Finn smiled proudly. "Thanks, Mum. Love you," he replied. "I love you too, son," his mum said. They both turned back to look at the stars one last time before going in. "Oh, look, Finn," his mum exclaimed. "A shooting star. Quick, make a wish." And there you go. That was the story Roots by James Stone. What a wonderfully happy and uplifting story. I read it fully last night and was really, really chuffed to see that it was perfect for today. So I hope you enjoyed the story. Please give this a share, leave a thumbs up, drop this a like, drop it a comment if you like. Tell me what you think. Maybe some stories that you would like to hear. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe. I'm looking to do more of these stories, maybe 1 or 2 a week. And yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to reading more stories. So have a wonderful, wonderful Beltane, and I will see you again very, very soon. Thank you to Anders for the theme music, and thank you to James for the story. Thank you to all of you for watching. Take care.